Hey everyone, how is it going? Kennedy Morgan. Thanks for joining me tonight. I am steering away from my Facebook page and doing my streaming on YouTube instead because I think I need to have more content on my YouTube channel. So let's see, what do we want to talk about today? For those of you who are joining, feel free to ask me anything. I'm just kind of sort of here to connect with you and have you ask me any questions that you might be interested in asking in terms of spirituality or mediumship or anything like that. But one of the things that I want to discuss today is a question that I've had over the past week, and I like to sort of address questions sometimes. And the question is, whether someone has to go to a medium or not, and what they should prepare for when they do go to a medium, or what they should do prior to that appointment. So sorry, there's someone at the door here. And so I think it's important to realize that when you're making that appointment, always make an appointment with someone who is reputable. So usually I would recommend that you get someone who has maybe had readings with one of your friends or family members or something like that. But usually referrals are the best because at that point they seem a little bit more credible, I think. I remember when I was starting off in my own mediumship, I was going from one psychic to medium to psychic to medium to tarot card readers, and I was just kind of sort of pulling things off from the internet, and that didn't really work out too well for me. It wasn't until I actually joined a circle, and then I had other meetings around me, and we were all practicing our skill sets, that I actually had some readings that really meant something or could be validated by my own people that passed in my life. So at that point, I always feel that go with people go with people that have who they've been to already, and there's a credibility there. So it's always word of mouth, I guess. But I always like to say this too, is that you don't have to go to a medium to know that your loved ones are around you. And I say that because people come to me not to really connect with their loved ones, because I know that spirits are always around. Your loved ones are with you. But people come to me for the validation of that. So when you're out and about, going about your day and just wondering if your mom is with you, or your father's with you, or one of your brothers and sisters are with you, those that have passed, of course, they are, and watch for those signs. And sometimes if you think in your head, you kind of sort of say, if you're around me, just give me a sign. Give me a sign that I know, or show me a butterfly, or show me something that I know that's you. And then be open to those signs that come through. Spirit will come through a lot of times in so many different ways for people. You may be at a coffee shop and listening to a conversation or eavesdropping on a conversation next to you, and it's something about fashion design, and maybe that your mother was a fashion designer. Okay, so that type of stuff, sometimes it's very subtle, but those signs can be missed because you don't realize that at that very moment that particular soul or that particular spirit is trying to come through and get your attention by letting you focus or eavesdrop on that conversation. Another way too that spirit comes through too is like signs and symbols, butterflies, coins, numbers. Sometimes if you pick up a coin and you look at the date, it might be the date that your father was born on, or it might be your birthday or something like that. So you have to look at these signs because they're important to recognize that. Hello, MJ, how are you? It's important to understand that these are signs from spirit, and when we miss them is when we kind of, spirit's like, well, I'm working so hard to kind of sort of put these things in front of you, but you're not seeing them. So always look out for those things. It's very important, and that also too gives you the comfort and kind of knowing that they're with you at all times. So, and that's another thing too. If you ever go to a meeting and have a reading with a medium and a reputable one. The best thing to do to prepare ahead of time is just to kind of sort of release the day, clear your mind, have no expectations, have no agendas. I know that when people come to me, sometimes they have a specific person that they want to connect with, or a specific soul that they want to connect with. And for the most part, I don't have control over who comes through or the types of messages that might come through. When I do a reading, I do set intentions of making sure that, those spirits that do come forward, that they come forward with the greater good of the person that's in front of me or my client, or their loved ones. And so typically I'll get messages, that will help them out just a little bit to live a life just a little bit easier, or have a little bit more of a different perspective in terms of how things are going in their lives, maybe some clarity, maybe some direction. But there is definitely a lot of healing and a lot of comfort that comes along with that. So that's my intention. So when spirit comes through, I really have no control over who they are or what they're going to say. So when you come to a medium, it's important to kind of sort of have that same perspective. I find that a lot of times when people come to me with a certain agenda or a certain expectation, that expectation, what I would describe as an energetic barrier. And it's really hard for spirit to, not necessarily break through that barrier, or to blend with me when that energetic barrier is there. So and funny enough, the less expectations you have, the less, releasing of the agenda, the stronger the spirit comes through. I will tell you this: when you come to an appointment or a meeting or a psychic, and you've had a frustrating day, or maybe you've been really, really sad, or very, very frustrated, or very angry, it's going to be much harder for them to bring forth that energy or to make that connection for you, because anger, sadness, depression, all that stuff is what I call the lower vibrational energies, or lower emotional set points. They affect the energy, and your energy just affects the reading just as much as the medium, and just as much as the spirit, the soul that comes through as well. So keep that in mind, when you're making that appointment to the medium. But yeah, always watch out for those signs, for spirit, from spirit, and they come through in the most amazing ways. Sometimes though, you might be thinking, gosh, should I buy that house, right? And so you're driving down the freeway, and you're passing these, billboards along the freeway, and all of a sudden you see this big, beautiful house, and on it says, buy now, or the little tag that says, buy now, right? That's just spirit's way of coming through to you and giving you some guidance in that very moment. And if you're not paying attention, you miss it. And then later on, you decide, I'm not going to go to the house, and you get another house, and it doesn't turn out too well. Then that's kind of sort of like a decision. That's because, you've missed that sign. It's a decision that you've made based upon not having that guidance or clarity that spirit might come through for you with, so that you can make, certain choices and decisions that are beneficial for you. So keep that in mind as well. So if there's any questions you guys want to ask me, feel free. I know there's only like 2 right now. I'm just starting this Sunday, spiritual talk, mediumship talk day. So I'm hoping to gain more. I'm hoping to get the people that I have on Facebook over to my YouTube channel, so that I can create more content on my YouTube channel. So I don't know who else is there. So over here, drop in and say hi. Or if you have any questions about spirit or mediumship or what I do or psychic stuff, let me know. I'm happy to answer them for you. It's raining a lot here in Puerto Vallarta. I think we're getting some sort of a storm or depression that's coming in here, and it just really flooded the streets. So I was coming home from dinner, and there was about this much water in the streets running. It looked like a river, but I had to wade through the water just to get to my apartment. So that's how crazy it is, and how much it rains down here during the summertime. So the other thing that just came to my mind too, when we're talking about spirit, is that people ask me, why sometimes, like when they have or I do a demonstration, and afterwards, or maybe after the reading, they're left kind of sort of feeling drained, or feeling as if they're a little more tired. MJ, is there bad and good in the spirit world? Of course, there is. When we cross over, our personalities will go away. Our core personalities will go away. There are bad spirits and good spirits, but I wouldn't necessarily label them as that. They're just spirits to me. Sometimes what you might see as bad might be a spirit that's just trying to get your attention to get help for them. And although it may come across as being scary or somewhat, creepy or weird, that's just their way of coming through to let you know that they're trying to get your attention. So, and a lot of time, spirit is confused with things like ghost and whatnot too. So that's a good question, actually, MJ, as I'm leading into this. Ghosts are those souls that have not fully transitioned fully into spirit, okay, or transitioned fully into spirit. It doesn't mean that they're stuck. It doesn't mean that they're trapped. It doesn't mean that, there's anything wrong. It just means that for some reason they still have an attachment here to this physical world. So it's almost like they are at the brink of fully transitioning or crossing over. They may not necessarily know that they passed, or maybe there's some sort of attachment due to the family situation or the way that they have passed. But for the most part, when you transition, a soul transition, they transition fully right then and there. And then they go on to the spirit world. And sometimes there's other stuff that has to kind of sort of happen. It's almost like this process that you go through, which includes your life review. But anyways, I digress. Back to your question, if they're bad and good spirits, there are spirits. In terms of the bad souls, I don't know if they're bad. They're just spirits, because when you cross over, for the most part, you go through your life review and you look at your life objectively, and whatever it is that you've experienced in your life and your choices and decisions, the actions that you make for yourself, you kind of feel the repercussion of that as you go through your life review, because not only do you feel the emotional or mental distress or anxiety that, and even happiness that you cause with your words or your actions, you feel that many times over, because of when we, let's say, for example, tell somebody that they're stupid or they're wrong or they're an idiot, right? Well, that creates an energy within that person, and that same type of energy is then passed forward and passed on, whether we know it or not. And so when you're looking at your life review, that particular moment when you said that to somebody, you feel that energy plus the emotions and the distress and all the impact of all the other people in their lives too. And that's pretty overwhelming. And that's when as a soul, we step back and go, okay, I could have done something better there next time, right? And so we learn from that experience. A lot of people say, Earth is a school. And yes, it is. But where we really learn is when we cross over and we see what we do, we see our actions, we see the choices and the words that we choose in order to either tear down somebody or lift somebody up, okay? So that's why I say, in life, always, 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 and every day, try and be the best version of yourself. And yes, we all fail. Even I fail. People think that just because I'm a medium means like I'm the spiritual guru. I'm not. I am just like everybody else, trying to live my life, trying to perfect myself, be a better version of myself every single day. And sometimes I fail at that. And sometimes I exceed at that, right? We all do. But the important thing is that you try and you keep that as something that you work towards, okay? And that really is what spirituality is. It's not someone who's achieved enlightenment or something like that. Spirituality is the journey in achieving that enlightenment. Once you're enlightened, you're already there. There's no, you've got that already. So there's no journey there. So at that point, you've kind of sort of crossed over, So keep that in mind as you're going through your day. So in terms of when you cross over, we see our life review. So there's really no bad necessarily. It's just we realize that we could have done better. Or that we realize that, hey, we really did a good job at this because you know what? We took care of our family. We were the best version of ourselves as much as possible through our entire lifetime. And we are able to then rejoice in that and have comfort knowing that, you know what? We did good. There's no judgments on the other side. God is not sitting here, damning you to hell or anything like that. The person who judges you the most is, guess who? You. Because you're the one who looks at yourself and says, yeah, no, that was pretty bad. I shouldn't have done that. So if you're asking me whether there's evil or not, that's a different story, okay? As most of you know who follow me, or most everybody who follow me knows that I don't necessarily believe in evil. I think that evil is something that's man-made, it's created, and people do evil acts and think evil and use evil words to break things down and to tear things apart. But I don't think that people are necessarily evil in and of themselves. I do believe, because there are so many different dimensions. There's like, I think scientists have now figured out or theorized that there's like 11 different dimensions, and now they're thinking that there's so many more. I do think that those dimensions sometimes do overlap in our third 3D-dimensional world here, and what we might think as something that is evil might be just another entity or another energy that somehow overlapped into this physical world here. And we see that sometimes in, you know, the weird stuff or the paranormal stuff that happens, like the poltergeist and things like that. So that's my take on that situation there. But for the most part, there's really no bad spirits. I've never had, you know, I never had anything where that made me scared. I've had things that made me creeped out or weird or like, you know, that type of thing. But I've never been scared for, you know, crossing over. And mostly because I don't really go there. I don't lower my energy or lower my vibration enough to really connect with that type of energy. I always keep my vibration really high, and that's really important. So my daughter is trying to astral project, so I'm trying to get a good perspective. Do you ever astral travel? Absolutely, MJ. I'm just as complex as everybody else. My life, just because I'm a medium, doesn't mean that it's simple. You know, it's like I'm still, you know, working through things, working through my own, you know, thoughts, processes, and emotions, things like that. You know, I'm no special than anybody else. I just happen to be able to communicate with the dead. That's all. So, and that's just an ability. Everybody has that ability, and that's why I say, you know, you don't necessarily have to come to a medium to know that your loved ones are around you. They're around you. You just come to a medium just to validate that they are. That's really it. So, as far as your daughter trying to astral project, yes, I have astral projected before. It's not a very common thing for me to do. I remember the first time. I'll kind of sort of tell you a story of when I first time I knew that I was astral projecting. I was working for a modeling agency, and I was a scout at the time. And I don't know, maybe I was in my early to mid 20s at the time, and I had gone to Denver to scout some models at one of the locations they had down there. So, and I was staying at the company loft, and I remember driving home one night, and there was a commotion across the street. I parked my car, on the side of the street there. And the loft was in the middle of the city, so I love Denver. It's such a cool city. I see the bus turning. It's a double-decker bus, so it's extra long. I see the bus turning the corner, and this woman with her two Doberman pinschers kept slamming on the side of the bus and on the side of the windows. And finally, the bus stopped, and I hear this commotion. I hear her yelling and screaming or something like that. And the bus driver turns off the bus, and they both exit the bus, and they go on the other side of the bus. So I can't really see them. So I'm thinking to myself, what's going on here? So I go around to the other side. I cross the street to go around the other side of the bus, and I walk towards the corner. And there's a big, huge crowd at the end of the corner. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, what's going on here? So I kind of, being petite and small, only like 5'7", I kind of sort of like, work my way through the crowd to the front of the crowd, and to my horror, there was a body of a man in the middle of the street, and there was the ambulance there. I had just gotten there as the ambulance got there. They took out the gurney, and I remember the man being he looked like he was heavyset. And I thought, okay, well, that's odd. But then when they cut his clothes, I guess to see, because he was bleeding, to see the extent of his wound, I realized that his body had swollen. And as they did that, his I know it's kind of graphic, and I apologize. I hope your kids aren't watching. But where the cut was, the stomach split open, and all his guts entrails fell on the street, and it was just very surreal for me. And they were putting everything on his burden. At that point, I knew the guy was dead. His backpack was on the side of the street. His hat was on the other side. And it was like this Indiana Jones hat. I remember this very clearly. At that moment, I literally bowed my head, and just in my own mind, I was praying for him and his family and the people that didn't know that he passed. And I was hoping them and wishing them well for the moment that they did find out, because I know that when someone passes, it's very difficult for people especially when it's so sudden and unexpected. It's such a shock. So then I go back to the loft, still kind of sort of traumatized by all this, and I call my friend on the phone, and I'm like crying because, I was traumatized. But I eventually calmed down, had dinner, was watching TV, got really, really tired. I just remember myself getting really, really tired. And then I went to bed, and I remember waking up, and I felt my body rock back and forth. That's always a sign of like going out of your body. It's one of the signs, actually. And if you can imagine like two magnets of the same polarity put together, and they you push them together, it's really tough. They kind of sort of slip by each other, and you feel that bounce. That's what it felt like, but it was just kind of sort of like this. And at that moment, I opened my eyes, and as I opened my eyes, I realized that I was sitting up like this with my arms to my side in the bed. And I thought, that's really weird. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, let's just go get a drink of water. And as I tried to move my arms, I couldn't move my arms. And I looked at my arms, and they were there at the side of my bed. And I was like, oh my God, I can't move. And at first I thought I'm paralyzed. But then I calmed myself down, and I was like, no, this is something different. And I thought, am I dreaming? What's going on? And as I thought that, it's almost like my arms released, and then I was able to move my arm. But as I moved my arm, I could see my physical arm at the side of my side, but I could see like a haze of the fingers, and I was passing them through like this. It was kind of cool. And then I thought, oh my God, what's going on here? Am I dead? Did I die? What's happening? As I looked down around the room, I became very, very, very calm, because I don't know what it was, but I realized that everything from the bedposts to even the floor, to the decorations in the room, to the TV, to this vase that was on top of the TV, everything glowed with this like beautiful, beautiful, soft like moonlight, if I could describe it that way. And I remember looking through the windows, and I could see the shaft of light from the moon coming through. And it was like, how sometimes the sun pierces the clouds and you can see the shaft of light, and it just looks really beautiful. It was like that, but it's just much more soft. And that's when I realized that everything in this world, from the organic to the inorganic, everything has an energy, and everything has a specific energy. And then I found myself, I don't know how, but I found myself standing at the corner of the bed. And as I stood at the corner of the bed, I was pulled out to kind of sort of like the hallway area. And I looked around, and immediately I felt like there was something else there with me. So I was thinking to myself, oh my God, there's a ghost in here. And sure enough, there is a guy that was standing really maybe 5 feet away from me. And he had his backpack on his side, and he had his hat on. And I recognized this guy as being the guy who I had seen laying in the middle of the street after he was ran over by the bus. And he looked at me, and I looked at him. I wasn't scared. I wasn't freaked out. He put his backpack over his shoulder, tipped his hat, and then walked down the hallway and disappeared at the door. At that moment, I felt myself bounce back into my body, and I woke up, and I just remember being really, really, really thirsty. That was one of the first times that I experienced not just an astral projection, but also to communicating with spirit on the other side. But that was when I was in my 20s, and even then I didn't know what was going on. I had no idea what mediums were. I believe that there were people who had quote unquote special powers, but I didn't know. I didn't know what was happening. I just thought it was like this weird moment. Everybody has those weird moments, or moments of like paranormal stuff that happens, but I just kind of sort of like, okay, this is once in a lifetime thing. That's it, right? So that was my first time astral traveling. And astral travel takes a lot of like meditation, and there's techniques that you could do as well. So if your daughter's wanting to get into that, I tried the techniques on YouTube. They don't really work for me. However, I think it's a technique that she has to develop for herself. The only thing that I would say is if she's actively trying to astral travel, that she makes sure that she energetically protects herself first before she makes that attempt. Because you want to make sure that anytime when you're astral traveling or going into the fourth or fifth dimension is what you do when you do that. That you always protect yourself because you never know what might be there. So, and it's better to be safe than sorry. So, see, yeah. Okay, so to answer your questions, MJ, how do you differentiate energetic sludge from love vibration spirits? You know, everybody does. But a lot of times what we do is we don't pay attention to that gut feeling, or we don't pay attention to that little voice in our head saying, maybe you should stay away from this person, or this person's not a really good person. But we don't, we just kind of sort of throw it off as imagination, or I'll give this person a chance, or something like that, right? And I always say this to people in my previous talks and YouTube videos and whatnot. People think that I have this like aura of arm's length away, or even like concealment, or maybe being stuck up, and that's not the case at all. What they are feeling and what people might be feeling is that I'm very specific in the type of energies that I want to surround myself with, right? And because I recognize those types, and we're not, always like accurate, right? But for the most part, I can recognize those type of energies that maybe are just kind of sort of lower vibration, and I don't want to surround myself with that because of what I do. I feel like I have to like maintain a certain level of vibrational state so that, in the connection of spirit, I am having the intent of bringing forward things that will benefit the other person. So it's important for me to keep my vibrational state high and not go so low for that reason. So yeah, that's why I sometimes people think that maybe I don't like them, and it's not because I don't like you. It's not because I don't like people, because I do like people. I'm very specific. The people, the situations, the circumstances, the events that happen around me. I'm very, very, very cognizant about that. I'm very purposeful in what parties I might go to, what restaurant I might go to, what crowd I might hang out with, what invitations I might accept, things like that. Because if I'm not feeling it, I'm not going. That's just how it is. So, so you kind of know how, but you just have to listen for yourself. You have to follow that gut feeling, that inner intuition or inner guidance system is what I call it, to kind of sort of understand the difference between sludge, versus high vibrational love type energies that are out there. So, and sometimes that's just a matter of training yourself and to do so. Let me see here. The threshold or point when you're astral traveling. You will know when you're astral traveling typically because when you are viewing, if you ever get astral travel and you look back behind you or back from where you are, you'll see your body. And a lot of times, I've never seen the silver cord, but a lot of times you'll have that silver cord that's attached to your body as well. The other thing too is you know when you're astral traveling because even though it feels like a dream, it's not, because everything is vivid. It's not blurry. You know how like when you have a dream and you see somebody, you don't see their face, but you just know it's them. It's not like that in astral traveling. You actually see the person. You actually see the face and all that stuff. So just gotta plug my computer in here before we lose connection. But yeah, so you'll know there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I used to think that, oh well, it was a dream, or I used to write things off as dreams too. But I've since learned to recognize and understand the difference between dreams, astral traveling, and when spirits communicate with me during sleep or during my dreams and whatnot. So excuse me. Okay, back. I've never had anyone explain astral travel that way. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Oh, sure, no worries. And I wouldn't. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't have known how to explain that unless I had that experience myself. I've had another astral experience too, and then this was kind of sort of fun. One of my friends had just moved to Los Angeles from Seattle, and she stayed with us. And because I'm a gentleman, I allowed her to have my room while she was with us, and I slept on the sofa bed in the living room while my roommate slept in his room. And this was, I think, during the Olympics, somewhere in 2007, maybe 2008, somewhere around there. I forget. But I remember us watching the Olympics, and I felt really tired. Like I wanted to be alone. And so I told my roommate and my friend, I said, I'm sorry, you guys, but I just really need to get to bed here. I feel really tired. I think I might be coming down with something. I'm not quite sure. So they were really nice and very, generous and understanding and extending their understanding. So they all went to their rooms, and I pulled out the sofa bed, made the bed, brushed my teeth, and got ready for bed and all that. And I remember laying down, and I laid to the side, and I remember laying down, and I immediately, as I put my head down, I felt as if my head had sunken into the pillow and gone deeper and deeper. But as I went deeper and deeper, I was expecting to hit the floor of the living room, but I didn't. I found myself floating, and I opened my eyes, and I was floating, and my face was up against the ceiling. And I looked back, and I saw my body just as comfortable and as quiet and as just completely asleep like this on the sofa bed. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then Brad was my roommate's name, and I was like, I gotta tell Brad. So then I at that moment, I found myself standing at the foot of the bed, and I started walking towards Brad's room. But I felt like the more I tried walking, the more it felt like there were rubber bands pulling me back to my body. It wasn't until I realized that I didn't have any legs that I was like, you can't walk. And so what I found is like an astral projection. You don't move around with your physical body, you move around with your consciousness. So the minute I thought about being at his room, my body or my consciousness was just right there, right in front of the door. And at that point, I tried to reach for the handle, and I couldn't. My hands would pass through the handle. And I was like, oh my God. And I realized again that, all right, well, your energy right now, so just go through the door. So I literally went through the door, and that was the cool part. As I went through the door, there was a moment of complete blackness, and then it just kind of sort of, the other side of the door popped into view. And I saw Brad sleeping in bed, and I was yelling at him. I was like, Brad. And I see Brad sitting up in bed, like startled, like I know he heard something. And I was going, Brad. And that's when I found myself popped back into my body. It was, I don't know why, but I found myself popped back into my body. I woke up, and of course at that point I thought, oh, it's just a dream. Okay. So the next day, I'm in the kitchen, getting ready for work, making breakfast, all that. Brad comes out because he works at home. So Brad comes out, and he says, I have to tell you, I had the weirdest thing happen to me last night. I'm like, what? He goes, I had this thing where I thought I heard you calling my name. You were in my room calling my name. And of course, my face went completely white, and I told him the story. And, we were both like in shock. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. So that was kind of sort of a validation that at that point I was also astral projecting as well. So I've had so many stories like that, not just astral projecting, but other stuff throughout my life. But even then, I didn't know what was happening to me. It wasn't until my early 30s, mid 30s, somewhere around there, when I realized, okay, there's something here. I have a connection here that I have to kind of sort of work out, look into, research, and decide on what I want to do with it, really. So, you're welcome for that information. Yeah, I think this is going to be saved on the YouTube channel. So I'm hoping to kind of sort of get more content up there. Mm-hmm. So yes, if your daughter's listening to this, MJ, just let her know that, before she does any type of attempt of astral projection, have her do a little bit of a meditation to kind of sort of strengthen her energy and strengthen and protect herself first. It's really, really important. Even though, you know, I do what I do, I don't just kind of sort of do it. There's a process and there's a preparation that I have to do every single day that happens before I do any type of readings. And then even afterwards, I call it the closing of it. So I have to also, what I call closing down or powering down. Otherwise, I'd be open to so many energies out there. And that's what you don't want to do. So, so whenever we're doing any type of work like this, where we're, you know, transitioning into another realm or another energy or the spirit world, it's important to make sure that we protect ourselves, because you never know what you're going to come up with. And it's better to have the protection than to not. And even though, you know, there's really nothing on the other side that can specifically hurt you in that sense, there are things that can and will, if they have the opportunity, they can find, like, quote unquote, the crack in the wall, you know, the tear in the wall, will be tempted to kind of sort of, you know, infiltrate. So if that's the way to put it, but it's very rare, and those type of things are few and far in between. A lot of the stuff that you might hear on Facebook or YouTube channels or even like on TV, a lot of that stuff is, you know, sensationalized. So it's not as fascinating or sensational as you may think it is. So, or there's a sense of like twisting of the reality or twisting of the authenticity of that. Because even as a medium, you know, people think that I actually have spirit here with me, talking to me in my ear, that I'm just regurgitating what they're saying, and it's not like that. Or people think that I see, you know, dead people all the time, and it's not like that at all. So it's how I receive things is a matter of being open to the different types, I guess, or different levels of communication. But they come through me in signs, symbols, impressions, images. Sometimes I see like video clips playing in my head. It feels like a daydream to me. Sometimes I hear like little bits and pieces of voices and sounds, but it's not like I hear their voice. I hear it in my own voice in my head. So, you know, for example, if you've ever, you know, thought to yourself, you know, I need to go do the laundry, right? Or I need to go wash the dishes. You're not saying it out loud, but you're saying it in your head, and it's in your head's voice. You hear your own voice saying it. That's what I hear when spirit talks to me. They use my own head's voice in order to communicate sometimes. And sometimes I do see spirit, but it's not very often, because it takes a lot of energy for them to come through that way. I can't hold on to that type of energy for that long. Versus, you know, in the normal way of them coming through, which is like, I call it mental mediumship. Through the signs and impressions, I can hold on to their energy for a little bit while longer to maintain that connection and be able to communicate with them. Yeah, typically it takes a lot of energy for spirit to come through. So physically, like I can see them physically, and even then it's like boop, just like that, and they're gone. It's not. They don't sit there and stand there for 5 hours talking to me, right? But I can see them really, really flash, and then they're gone. And that's when sometimes I get startled. Just like the other day when I walked into my studio and I saw the woman in my studio, and I thought, oh my God, someone broke in here. But then I realized that she doesn't belong in this physical world, and I knew at that point that she was a spirit. But literally, it was like a split second like that. And that's how you see things sometimes. And sometimes you see the shadows, like out of the corner of your eye or something like that. That's also, you know, spirit that might be coming through, trying to get your attention. Because a lot of times people think, oh my God, it's evil because it's a shadow. Right? Because we think shadows are evil. Oh my God. Not necessarily true. It's just sometimes spirit comes through and manifests in different ways. So we just have to be open. But the most important thing is to not be afraid. Because the moment you are afraid, that you create that sort of energy, and then you bring that energy, or you allow that energy to stay with you. And you don't want that. So always coming from a higher vibration set point. Oh, from a reader from Puerto Vallarta. Who's that? I mean, you mean like another medium or another, you found me through another reader from Puerto Vallarta. So is that like another medium or a psychic or someone who does intuitive readings? Or? Oh, and by the way, I just talked about this in my Facebook post today. One of my pet peeves is, like, you know, when psychics and mediums, you go to them and they're like, you know, they give you a reading, and they might say something like, oh, you know, someone like put a curse on you, or there's some evil spirit following you, and you know, if you give me another $350, like I can remove that or something. No, I would probably, you know, turn and run the other direction at that point. That would be my recommendation. Just so you know, there is such thing as like witchcraft or like, you know, spells or things like that, but it's not what you might think in terms of like magic out of this world. Remember that everything in this world comes from intention. So if you're, for example, I can take this piece of napkin, roll it up like this, right? And just do something like that, make it look pretty or make it look weird or however I want to do, whatever I want to do with it. And all I have to do is say, I want this napkin to represent good luck. And that's all. That's all you have to do. It's your intention that creates the energetic level of what might happen or what you attract and what might happen to you, right? So now because I think that, I carry this with me all the time. And then I realize that things are starting to align in my life and good stuff is starting to happen. And I have made it all because this little thing, right? And it's not this little thing. This little thing is what I call the anchor, okay? So when you anchor an intention, it's almost like a, what do you call those? Stress stone, one of those rubbing stones, you know, when you get stressed out, you rub on the stone. I forget they're called, there's a specific name for them. It's the same thing. It's an anchoring tool so that whenever you pull it out or you look at it or you feel it or you touch it, it reminds you about that emotion or that emotional set point of when you're feeling protected, when you're feeling safe, or when you're feeling like, you know, you have good love or everything's happening happening the way that you want it to. And then of course you surround yourself with more of that vibrational set point. And because you do that, the universe then kind of sort of matches what it is that you're feeling, and it brings you more of that stuff. So really, you know, people have things like good luck charms and talismans and things like that. And I always encourage that because it becomes that anchor for you to remind yourself to have that emotional set point where, you know, instead of being sad or depressed or anxious or worried or, you know, stressed out, it reminds you to be more hopeful, right? So, and when you look at this stuff, you think, yes, I created this because I want to be hopeful. And then you start thinking about being hopeful, more hopeful things come. That's just how things work, okay? Yes, exactly, or worry stones, that's what they're called, worry stones. Thank you so much, MJ. I knew that there was a name for them, I just couldn't remember it off the top of my head, but yeah, worry stones. And then, or worry dolls, exactly. So they're the same thing, right? So I could take my earpiece, just like this, you know, create an intention and anchor that intention with this earpiece so that every single time I pick up this earpiece or I wear it, it reminds me of being hopeful. And so then it changes my perspective, and because your perspective changes, then your emotion changes. Because your emotion changes to a higher level vibrational state, it inspires you to take the actions to do the things that you need to do in order to produce the results that you want. Really? So, you know, do you want to say that's magic? Okay. If you want to say that's logic, okay. If you want to say that there's some science to that, okay. I don't really care, you know, what you want to call that. I call it creating your own reality, manifesting those things that you want. And if you want to call that magic, awesome. If not, awesome. It's all semantics, right? It doesn't really matter. You're doing the same thing. Okay. So just keep that in mind. In terms of like curses and spells and witchcraft and all that stuff, it's all what you were made to believe. It's all so, and the power of words can be very anchoring as well. Just remember, you know, when someone says something bad to you, right? We hold that to us. We go, oh my God, they don't like me. What did I do? And we hold that. And every time we hear their words in our heads, it reminds us of that moment where we didn't feel good about ourselves. And of course, that lowers our vibrational set point. And that moment becomes the anchor to create that space where we're not higher vibration, right? So that's why it's so important to, like, when you're in that space, shift your thought pattern, do something different, get up and go do something, do an activity that takes you out of that thought pattern, that perspective, and it shifts you into a different thought pattern where you can be a little bit more hopeful, more thankful, more creative, more insightful, more satisfied, things like that will then help you to, again, come back to that space where emotionally you're in a higher vibrational set point or state. And that's when you start manifesting, creating your intentions. Very important. Do I follow any deities? Yes, I do. Mm-hmm. So I grew up Buddhist, and then at the age of 16, I converted to Catholic. 16, 17, I converted to Catholicism without my parents knowing, anyone knowing for that matter. Yeah, and so I don't know how I kept that secret, but I did. But yes, and so I consider myself a Catholic, not necessarily practicing, but I consider myself a Catholic. And a lot of people ask me sometimes, does God exist? And I tell you, yes, but it's not the God that, we come to believe or have been described as, men from the Bible who wrote off the scriptures, God sitting on his iron throne or golden throne, with a halo over his head. It's not that at all. God is in, and I believe in God, totally. Doing what I do, I totally believe, and I know that there's a God. And if you want to call it the higher power, source energy, whatever you want to call it, it's fine. Again, to me, it's all semantics, right? So, but yes, there is a God, but that God is an energy. I call it the God energy, and it's in everything. Remember I was talking to you about how when I had my first astral projection experience, and I saw every object in the room glowing, that is the energy of God. That everything, all life, all objects, rocks, stones, trees, dirt, that dirty towel you have, in your bathroom that you clean with, your sponge in your kitchen sink, everything has a specific energy, right? And that is the God energy that flows through everything. And that's why everything is so intertwined and so, like a web, everything's connected. And that's why, even though as cliches may sound, when people say we're all connected and no one's ever alone, it is so very, very, very true. So. Cool. Yeah. So, yep. Mm-hmm. So the angels are there too as well. You have, for me, when I do my practice and whatnot, what I do is I call in, my spirit guides, all the angels and saints, all the ascended masters and universal teachers, all the beings of light, all those who come forward and work for higher purpose and greater good, all my guardian angels, all the archangels, and I ask God to come with me whenever I do my meditation. And every single meditation, I do this prior to going deeper into it. And also too, every time I do a reading. So I have I call it my production crew. I call them a production crew. I have them with me because without them, I wouldn't be able to do and pull through spirit and be able to communicate with spirit as strong as I do. So, and God, yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so honestly, I know it sounds silly, it sounds kind of sort of stupid, but it really is the Force in Star Wars, except for in Star Wars, the Force is channeled through what do they call it? The midichlorians in the body. But in real life, it's just the energy that flows through everyone and everything. So, and everything has a specific energy or resonance to it. So keep that in mind too. Every person, every soul has a specific resonance to it. Your body, because it has a vibrational resonance that's equal or matches your soul, that's why your soul is symbiotic with your body. And that's why, you can't just take the soul and then put it into somebody else's body. You could, you can't just do that because the body itself doesn't resonate with that soul. It doesn't have the same energetic vibrational set from your state. So it's important to understand that, the belief in God is okay. If you don't believe in God, that's fine. It's okay. But just know that whatever you believe, there's still energy. And you can't not believe in energy. It's been proven. Electricity is energy. The act of moving is active energy. Even when you're sitting, that's called latent energy that is sitting there or being built up or being stored, latent energy. So there's energy in everything and every time, all times, everywhere. Do I believe in twin flames? I do, in a sense, like, because there's billions of souls. There's not just, so you can't just have one twin flame. I think that and those twin flames are not necessarily with you in a particular lifetime, although sometimes it does work out that way. So that's why sometimes, especially nowadays, the twin flames or soulmates or whatever, however you want to call that, people aren't finding their soulmates or twin flames within their lifetime. Or sometimes you may have someone young who, is really connected to someone like in the older generation, like maybe somebody who's like in their, early 30s, and maybe who have a really strong connection with like someone in their late 60s or early 70s, somewhere around there, and they end up either being together or being partners or falling in love. And a lot of times we're like, well, that sounds weird, right? But who's to judge? Because no one's, that's ageism, right? But who's to know that somehow, somewhere along the way, they were twin flames in different lifetimes. And in this lifetime here, they just weren't born at the same time or too close to each other. So now they had to meet at different ends or different points in their life and come together and make things work out that way. Who knows, right? So there are those twin flames. Are they usually in the same lifetime? Not usually. At least I don't find that. Sometimes they are, and sometimes that's why you sometimes see people who say, oh, this is my soulmate, and there is a soulmate. It's a true soulmate situation. They fall in love, and 60 years later, they're still in love, and nothing's changed, right? So that's really soulmate twin flame situation there. So yeah. So yes, it's true. It's true that twin flames and soulmates do exist. And sometimes soulmates are not necessarily someone that you fall in love with either, or that you have an intimate or romantic relationship with. Sometimes soulmates are your brothers, and sometimes it's your best friend. Sometimes it's like a mentor that might be your soulmate. But the connection there is beyond the physical, romantic, intimate, sexual thing. It's more the bond between the souls, and that's really what a twin flame is, what the soulmate is, right? That's why we call them soulmates. So that's a good question. I like that. I really like to talk about soulmates sometimes. Ayahuasca. Ah, yes, the DMT. No, I have not. I am a little. I will admit to everybody, I'm a bit of a control freak, not of other people, but of myself. So even I don't even drink that much for this very reason, because I don't want to act out of control, or I don't want to, black out or not be in control. There's always that or do something that may be inappropriate or out of character. So that's why I don't allow myself to really, do drugs or drink that much, or so on and so forth. So, but I do drink occasionally, and when I do, I know my limits. It's like maybe seriously, because I'm half Asian. It takes me like maybe a half a drink to a drink before I start getting flush, like red, and then I start looking like a lobster. And at that point, we kind of know that I'm tipsy. So. And that's when I know I have to stop. I can feel the blood pulsing in my face. It's kind of funny, actually. People make fun of me because of my Asian glow, is what I call it. So. Ayahuasca, yes. So just for those of you who don't know or haven't experienced or don't understand what ayahuasca is, it's a plant that's indigenous to South America, or maybe even Mexico. I'm not quite sure. Don't quote me on that. But for sure, I know South America. And you mix it with another compound, and you boil it. It becomes like a tea that you drink. And there are ayahuasca centers where they do like ayahuasca. I don't know what they would call it. Meditations, I guess, where you have someone who is versed and well-versed and experienced in the process of, helping somebody work through the ayahuasca experience. When you take the tea, you go into this kind of sort of altered state, and a lot of people, come out of it. Most everybody comes out of it claiming that they have very spiritual experience. And there's a YouTube, interesting YouTube video. If you want me to give it to you, I will. It's called DMT, dimethylamine. I can't even pronounce the name, it's so long. It's like a city block long. DMTs, I'll show you DMT for short, but they call it the spirit molecule because in our bodies, interestingly enough, we have what's called the pineal gland that sits in kind of sort of the base of your brain, towards the middle of your back, above the hypothalamus, but right in the middle of your head. And it's called the pineal gland or penile gland, and it's about this big. It's not that big at all. It's about the size of a pea, but it's shaped like a pine cone. And that pineal gland is, and scientists have been looking into this, is what they call the spiritual gland, because it naturally secretes DMT, okay? And it also secretes the enzymes and other hormones that help you to regulate your circadian rhythm or your sleeping pattern, so that you can be able to sleep, and your body knows to sleep when it gets dark at nighttime. It knows to wake up when it gets light outside, things like that. So that's your circadian rhythm. But it also helps you to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, depending on how much how deep you go in your sleep, into a more relaxed state of mind. So there's like alpha, beta, theta, and then like really, really deep state. And in that deep state is when you have your spiritual experience, and the DMT molecule helps you to get into that deeper state of mind, so that you can open to the spirit realm, or to the fourth or fifth dimension, so that you can have more spiritual experience. And scientists know that this molecule, the DMT molecule, does do that. What it does and why it does it, and why people experience sometimes a similar, experience in their in taking ayahuasca, they don't know, but they're doing that research now, and they continue to do research, but they know that there's something special with that DMT. So although your body creates the DMT naturally, it's not enough unless you're meditating on it, consistently, it's not enough to connect you like that to the spirit realm, or have you, experience it, or have you have a spiritual experience. Whereas the ayahuasca, because it's so potent with the DMT, once you take the tea, it connects you like that. So yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, people always think like, what I do is woo-woo ha-ha, and there's no true or real science based to it. But because I come from a very logical background, real estate and project management in IT. I mean, I know, right? From there to like mediumship and spirituality, like how does that work? It's like totally different ends of the spectrum. But because I come from the background, when I finally wrapped my head around what I could do and accepted what I could do, I had to have some level of of it being science-based. And so I did a lot of research and like why some people have this, what the mechanism is behind, mediumship and having psychic abilities and things like that. And so, it's not I just did this and decided, I'm going to be a medium the next day. There was a lot of like, okay, how does this work? What do I do? What causes this? Why am I receiving? Why do I feel this way? Why am I receiving these weird thoughts? Things like that I had to kind of sort of figure out, and then bring it back to, some level of science base, because I have to agree. I have to admit that, when we go into the unknown, you can't just accept things at face value. You have to have some sort of like, validation there. So that's why even in mediumship, validation is very important to me in terms of like the information that come through. Because if I'm giving it information, I'm saying, hey, mom was talking about, the ring that you left behind her, and she said that you did something with the ring and did something different with the ring, or maybe melted the gold down. I don't know, whatever. And the person says yes, then that to me is a validation, because how would I know that, right? Same thing with what I do. Like, there's got to be some sort of validation in terms of a science base to it. Now, is it all steeped in science? No, because there are things that I still don't know why it works the way it works, and why I receive things sometimes, and why I don't the other times. I have no explanation for that. But for the most part, I know one thing, that when I meditate, which is, there's a scientific fact and proof of meditation, that when you meditate, you bring yourself to a place where you are also you calm your mental state and you bring yourself into a more relaxed mental state. And that actually also opens up or releases that DMT that your pineal gland secretes. And that then helps you to create, or create that connection with spirit. So in the meditation, whether you know it or not, that's what you're doing. Okay. Am I able to feel the spirit of death around people when I'm doing mediumship? Yes. Oh, you mean like, do I know whether someone's gonna die? If that's your question, not necessarily. Not necessarily, no. Sometimes I'll know that someone will pass soon, or that's something that's coming up for that person. Not because I'm being told that, but because it's just an observation that I'm making in my sight. So, especially here in Puerto Vallarta, when I'm walking the streets, I kind of sort of put my horse blinders on and just keep walking, and I try not to pay attention too much to other people. And the reason why, because when I first moved here, I would go around and I would see people walking in the street, and I would see spirit, a bunch of them, gather behind them or walk with them through the streets, right? And I've learned that, I call it the gathering, and I've learned that when that happens, I know that that person will be passing soon. I don't have a date. I don't ever get dates or anything like that, but I know that for sure, that when spirit gathers like that, then that's just me being able to recognize that, okay, their time is coming soon. So that's the only way that I know if someone's going to pass. But typically, I don't see that so much anymore, only because I'm not paying attention to it. But I remember when I first moved to Puerto Vallarta and I was walking up and down the street here and going everywhere to kind of sort of explore, I would see that more often than not. So yeah. No, I don't see near death and exit points or anything like that. So I just I've never had that experience, so I can't really talk about whether I see the near-death part. When did I start seeing spirits? Oh gosh. I think probably when I was 4 or 5. I remember we had just moved into, when I was younger, and my family had just moved from Vietnam to the United States. We were living in government housing projects. And one of the government housing projects was by literally maybe 4 blocks from a huge cemetery. And not that the cemetery makes any difference or anything like that, but it just happened to be by the cemetery. But I remember as a kid, I was always creeped out by the cemetery. I'm not a long creep. I mean, the cemetery is actually my favorite place. And the reason why, because it's so peaceful there. Spirits aren't hanging around there, at least not often. And so it's the one place that I can go to when they're not around, oddly enough. So, so I used to always be creeped out by that cemetery. And I remember, living in this apartment, and I would see this young girl. She had dark hair, she had black hair, and a very, very pale face. I thought, I knew about ghosts at that point because, in Vietnam, ghosts were like prevalent. Everywhere there were ghosts, right? So you could turn a street corner and there was a ghost. Just kidding, but that's kind of sort of how I felt like. I remember sleeping. I remember her just standing in the corner of the room every single night for quite a while. As a kid, she never did anything. She just stood there. As a kid, I don't remember. I probably was scared. I don't remember being scared, but I probably was scared. I remember telling, my stepmother or my adopted mother that she was there, but no one ever believed me because it's like no one saw her. So, and then there were other times throughout my life where I would see flashes of ghosts. of people, of ghosts, right? Sometimes they'd be on the street. Sometimes they would be in the house. Sometimes, I remember one time too, I was living in Los Angeles, and I went to the Queen Mary, which is supposedly a haunted ship. And at that time, I was 26 or 27, and I didn't know. I had just moved really to Los Angeles. I didn't really know anything about the Queen Mary, so I never knew. And so my friend had brought me to the ship because they were celebrating a birthday there. And I snuck past the do not enter like chains, and I went downstairs to explore. And unbeknownst to me, where I had gone was at the actual the medical room or the medical galley of the ship. And I thought it was very interesting, I decided that, okay, it's time for me to go back up, because I remember being down for some time looking at all the black and white pictures, because it's also a museum too. So they open up the ship during the daytime as a museum, and they close it off at nighttime for like events and things like that. So the ship was closed off, but I went anyways. And so I was looking at all these black and white pictures, and it was really cool. And then I decided I'm going to go back up. But as I was starting to walk up the stairs, I started getting this very weird feeling that there was something with me. I didn't know, again, what my abilities were at the time, so I had no reference. But I remember seeing this nun with the abbot, like the old 1920s, hospital cap with the Red Cross on it. But it was like that, and she was all dressed in white, but it looked like a nun with an abbot or someone. But I knew she was either a nurse or a doctor of some sort, right? And I thought, okay, it's just my imagination, blah, blah, blah. I'm walking up. I finally meet my friend. Then someone decides that, okay, the ship decides, or whoever the event coordinator was, decided that, they were going to get a group of people together to go tour the ship. And I thought, okay, perfect, right? So go tour the ship. And we didn't go down, we just kind of stayed at top level, but there are also pictures there too as well. And as I'm passing by this picture, and I look at this black and white picture, I look at the picture, and I see the woman in the picture, and it was the exact same woman wearing the exact same like hospital nurse attire or gown that I saw coming up the stairs in the picture. And I knew at that point, I was like, and I told my friend, I was like, I saw her downstairs, coming up the stairs from the medical room downstairs. And he was just totally blown away, and I was blown away, and I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty creepy. Again, wasn't really scared, I was just a little creeped out, that's all, because things were kind of sort of connecting, and I was like, Tia Swan. That's funny. Thank you. Thank you, but I'm just humble little old me. I'm nobody special. Has it heightened my spiritual abilities? Living here, no. I know that Puerto Vallarta has its ley lines and there's energy vortexes around Puerto Vallarta, but it doesn't necessarily heighten my abilities or what I can do or my connection, or it's just energy, really. And it's actually, it's more of a thing for me, because now I've got to work with the energy, in a sense. That it's not just people now, it's energies of the earth that I'm also too, navigating is the correct word, perfect word, navigating as well. So it's that's kind of sort of on top of everything else. Is it bad? No. Is it overwhelming? No. It's just, I have to navigate it, right? So, and that's all. But if you really want to ask me, if I'm developing more while here in Puerto Vallarta, yes, because I am definitely, because I'm doing this more full time than I am, kind of sort of part time as I was when I was in Los Angeles. I was working real estate in Los Angeles, and I was also doing mediumship on the side, kind of moonlighting as a medium. And then Puerto Vallarta came down here. Wasn't really intending on doing mediumship full time. That's just how Spirit led me. So this is where I am. Yeah. But other than that, it's more me just really doing the work, the meditations, the practices, going to circles, and doing this on a daily basis, and working with spirit and working with my guides on a daily basis, and that's what creates that bond or that connection to the spirit world. That's really all it is. Yes, there are a number of them. I think there are probably like 8 of them altogether, or 8 vortexes altogether in Puerto Vallarta. I know that one of them, someone had written and I did a blog on it as well on my webpage. But I got the information from another source about the ley lines in Puerto Vallarta and how and where they connected. And I kind of sort of mapped it out on a Google thing. I just took a picture of a Google map and I sort of drew lines from where from the description of the ley lines, and I realized that there's a vortex at the mouth of the Rio Cuale, which is right next to me here. So, and that's why sometimes when you walk around in that area, you might feel a little bit lightheaded or even dizzy, or you feel more anxious or energetic in that say. When I say anxious, it's not a bad thing. It's just that's the best way that I can describe it. Or you feel more like off balance. That's why. So it's just because of the vortexes there. That's all. But with vortexes, there again, it's energy, right? And I find that with vortexes, especially in Puerto Vallarta, if you force your will, the vortex works against you. But when you plant the seed and you allow things to germinate and grow and expand, and you hold that reality or that perspective at a higher vibrational set point, the energy in the vortexes work with you. See, astrocartography. Oh, that's interesting. See, I don't know. And see, people, that's the thing, people think I know about, astrology or tarot cards and things like that. I don't. But it'd be interesting to learn for sure. And I probably should at some point doing what I do, because, I get a lot of those questions. But yeah, I know someone, and her name is, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on the name? But she did my natal chart, and it was very interesting. I mean, it was seriously pretty accurate. So I was pretty impressed with it. If you were to ask me to do a natal chart, I wouldn't know how to do it. Astro kit? What's an astro kit? Oh, okay. Okay, I'll have to check it out. Thanks for giving me that little tidbit. Yeah, for sure. And I love YouTube. I'm always kind of sort of scanning YouTube, seeing what's going on, things like that. So all things astrology. Good to know. Good to know. Thank you so much. I am planning to go to the Arthur Finley School of Psychic and Mediumship. It's in England, and I'm hoping to make it there next year. So crossing my fingers for that. Yeah, it's like the Hogswort of England. So it's kind of fun, and it looks like Hogswort too. So out of Harry Potter, the movie. Anyways, but MJ, it's time for me to go. It was such a great pleasure to talk with you today. If anybody who's interested in following my YouTube page or anything like that, invite them along. I'm going to do this every single Sunday, just kind of sort of have a talk and whatnot. But I really enjoyed our chat today, and I hope you did too. And thank you so much for following me and joining me tonight. And yeah, check in with me next Sunday, because I'll do this again next Sunday. I think I'm going to make this a regular thing, just to have a chat with people. Maybe they have questions for me about spirituality, things like that. And hopefully, maybe in some way, I can give them some insight or information that could help them. So thank you everybody, if you're watching this video, for joining me. And I hope you're all safe and you're in good health and well-being and all that stuff. And make sure that you love yourself, love each other, extend understanding to one another as much as you can. Especially in these days. I know it's pretty crazy out there, but try and stay above the craziness. That's all I can say. So Be well, be peaceful, lots of love. Take good care.